Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. You are listening to a podcast by Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. If you enjoy Faith Over Breakfast, we encourage you to rate it on the Apple Podcast app, on Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you and enjoy the podcast.
Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. My name's Andy, sitting with Eric. We pastor churches, Tucson, Arizona, the Village and Mission Church. And today we talked about, Eric?
Well, started out with the Asbury revival, talked a little bit about revival, talked about this generation, talked a little bit about gender.
Yeah, a little bit.
We talked about Lent.
Yeah.
It was good stuff.
Yeah, there was some stuff about the differences in the generations.
Yeah.
Lent, Easter, Good Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a very classic pastor conversation. Like you and I probably could have met at the Breakfast Club or whatever.
The Happy Rooster.
The Happy Rooster, and we would have probably had pretty much the same conversation.
Perfect. That's the plan.
Yeah.
So, and that is the plan. We haven't said this. We haven't said this in a while, but here's the concept. We don't script this because we used to have a breakfast table conversation we really enjoyed before we went on the radio and had to be more specific. We decided we liked the breakfast table conversation better.
Yeah.
So we've kept it going by not having a plan. It's two pastors talking about something. You get to sit at the table with us. Look, there's an empty chair.
There is an empty chair.
There
literally is an empty chair.
And that's yours. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah. So let me quickly, if you don't listen all the way through, let me say this. Number one, if you want a copy of Andy's new book, it is faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com. Send us a question. We'll answer it live on air. Give us your address. We'll send it to you. You have to be in the United States. Two, if you want to help support this, pay for the hosting, help make things happen, and have more influence over what we might talk about, then subscribe, support the church. Yeah, support the
Sure.
Make it so the Village doesn't have to host the podcast.
Yeah.
And we'll let you have some impact on this. So thank you guys. Enjoy. Hey.
Oh, hey.
Hi. Welcome.
Hey, thanks.
Welcome to the almost finished coffee.
Yeah, welcome to the show put on by the inside producers. I assume that everything we're going to talk about today has been guided by our inside producers.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, all of the
you brought them up last week.
Subscribers that we've gotten.
Yeah. Pretty
it's
incredible.
Overwhelming.
It is overwhelming how many people want to be inside producers of Faith Over Breakfast.
Oh my gosh.
So we'll just do whatever they told us to do today, starting with you. In the inside producer text, there were topics such as Lent, following up on the Asbury revival, and was that it?
That was it.
Yeah.
And, just you and I chatting about life.
Because
that's what Faith Over Breakfast is. It's just you and me chatting.
It's true. Except, we got to bring back the food somehow and the chewing.
People hate the chewing.
People hate the chewing. It's true. It's true.
Maybe we should have the intro where it's Faith Over Breakfast and it has this like clanking and things, and then it fades out.
I probably still have that audio somewhere.
I think I have your audio.
You should, man.
Unless I deleted it.
Well, right. That's one of the two.
Yeah.
Well, I think that'd be a nice touch, Eric.
That would be. It would give it a little bit of class.
Yeah, and
Faith
a little
Over Breakfast.
Just a reminder that even if we're not operating according to our roots, that we still have roots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
They go deep down into breakfast.
Deep down. Okay. Yeah. So we're eating trees now. I like it.
Roots.
Well, we talked about Asbury last time, so what if we kind of start there?
Yeah, let's start there.
So this thing has it's continued, and they have moved it. What do you think of the move? Do you think it will be the same?
I think the building can't handle everything.
It can't. No, it can't, for sure.
Yeah, and it's breaking out in other places. Lee University, where my brother went to school and where he lives.
Yeah. People are seeing it, I would assume. And I relate to this and going, well, I want to have that
experience.
Depth of experience.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So anyway, so they're moving the main event. And I also sensed in the little tidbit that I saw that for the school and the students there, this was maybe becoming a bit of a distraction. That they still needed to be able to, whatever God was doing there, they needed to be able to do without all the hype.
Right.
Maybe around, which I'm not saying the hype is bad. That sounds negative. It's not. I'm just saying it becomes another thing.
Yeah.
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 So anyway, that was interesting. Glad to see it. I went and listened to the sermon that started it. Did you?
I listened to part of it.
Yeah. That made me like it even more.
Yeah.
Because it was a Christian Missionary Alliance leader who was there. And as I was watching it, I thought he kind of reminded me of people who might speak at our churches. Mm-hmm. He was looking for his clicker, mildly awkward from time to time. But then he kind of jumped in and took things seriously. But my favorite thing, as I was listening, I just found myself going like, yes, because he was talking about love. He was kind of casting this high vision for love and all the ways that we don't love like we should, and we haven't been loved the way that we should. Kind of created a sense of the problem that is within our hearts, and pointed to how it had impacted the people in the room, then how they also impact others. It was an honest appraisal of the brokenness, and then I was just thinking in my mind, I seriously thought this as I was listening to it. I said, for me to believe this is real revival, this thing has to come back to Jesus. And then that's exactly what he did. He just said, you can't love like this. There's no way, And then he comes around to saying, you have to experience this love. Like, you have to receive this love from Jesus. And somewhere in there, he offered that, and this was, I thought, pretty key in this particular event, and it was convicting to me. He said, I don't have anywhere to be after this, so I'll pray with you. If you need to experience this love, stick around. I'll pray with you. And I was like, there it was, right there. Now, I'm not saying that's a formula that you could go reproduce. I'm saying in that particular circumstance, it pointed out the problem, the brokenness in these people's lives that they really experience and perpetuate. It pointed him to Jesus, and he offered him, I'm here. I'll pray with you.
Yeah, and I would actually maybe argue that it is a formula.
Yeah.
And I think it's a formula that works all the time.
There you go. Well, I'm saying, I guess...
Maybe not to have people maybe hang out for 144 hours.
This is my point.
But to experience the Spirit of God.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you make yourself available to pray over people.
Yeah.
To care for them.
What I mean by formula, and part of why I was rooting for the gospel to come into play and stuff, is because I do believe those are key elements. But by formula, I mean, maybe you get one person that wants to pray afterward.
Right.
That's great. But you're not necessarily going to get these huge results. But it was really cool to see an unmanufactured, just honest, not overblown. It was just real. It was great. I was super encouraged. I was encouraged by the message, even though it was utterly framed to college students. Yeah. It rung so true.
It's true for all of us. That it is you cannot love without tasting and experiencing the deep love of Jesus.
Yep.
Because we only love in response to Jesus.
And the other thing he did besides offering his time is he just asked the Holy Spirit to work.
Yeah.
Just stopped in the middle of the talk, prayed for a second, asked the Spirit to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are important things.
Mm-hmm.
A reason I wanted to talk about it, not partly because I wanted to chat a little bit about revival. Two, I wanted to just chat about how it's spreading and what you think about that. I think just where the local church who's watching young people.
Yeah.
But I think, honestly, I looked at the pictures, I looked at the videos. It's not just young people.
No.
It's people from all ages now. And there's, and usually God does prick the hearts of young people to start the movements like this. But that doesn't mean that the Spirit doesn't fall on everyone.
Right.
So I don't know. So I guess partly I just wanted to talk about, I guess the social media end of this is really interesting to me because I think revivals happen like this all the time. When I think of revival, I think that the Spirit moves in people and in churches and communities, but we're not broadcasting, we're not TikToking, we're not streaming, some incredible things have happened at the Village, and I suspect at Mission Church, and no one's TikToked it,
yes,
right? And I've been at some incredible conferences, and I didn't stream it. And I'm not saying this bad, but I'm thinking, wow, this is a different world we live in. This is a world where all over the world now, people know about this thing that happened in this little school in this little town.
And they knew, when you look back, so people who shared about the Wheaton revival, it ended up in the paper, you would assume, days, if not weeks, if not a month later.
Sure.
And now people are real time, like joining it via streaming services, right?
Which
it's very different.
not a bad thing, but
we're talking about it because of this.
Yeah, it's just interesting. I guess just as a cultural observation. I'm excited that it's moving from campus to campus. I hope for a long-term impact in those things. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, when you hear, we talked about this a little bit last time, but when you hear the word revival, I mean, to revive something is to bring it back to life, or it's close to death and you are bringing it to life. So there's an implication there that there's a deadness that needs to be brought to life. Do you think that characterizes where the spirituality of younger people is at this moment in time? In general, let's just speak about kids who, quote unquote, say they follow Jesus.
So there were two things that he keyed in on in his talk that made total sense to me as to why they landed with people and made a few people say, I need to stay and pray. And it gets at your question. The first was that he directly went after that he's like, there are people in this room who when you say you're loving someone, it's not love.
Right.
And he referenced that he had been sexually abused, I believe, in there himself at one point. But he just kind of stayed on that for a second. Like the thing maybe you even think it's love, but it's not. It's not because, and he talked about the characteristics of love. It's not these things. So it's not love. And so what you're doing is not love. And so there's, and I would say there's a spiritual deadness that's caused by engaging in those things. There's a spiritual deadness that leads to those things where you're replacing real love with a caricature of love, and you're trying to fill a void, but you're using something that isn't the real thing. So, and then the other thing he talked about that he went right after was he's like, many of you have not been loved. And he talked again about himself, but he talked about in the church that there are people that made you think you're safe. It made you think you're cared about here, and then the rug got pulled out from under you, and that wasn't love, and you've been hurt by this, right? And my guess would be that some people that stuck around to pray were on both ends of that spectrum. Some of them thinking what I'm doing is not love. I know it's not. I can sense it's not. And then others who are like, I've been impacted by this. I've been hurt. And he acknowledged right away, this happens in our churches. And so a spiritual deadness, I think that those two things contribute to a deadness, not just of people not giving a rip or whatever, but it's like hurt inflicted that we all inflict on each other. That's very real. Anyway, that I think that tapped into a death that people have experienced, many forms of it. So, and I hear and see that a lot, and we experience the ramifications. And even, I mean, we are all just hurting each other, not loving each other.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a part of things. I mean, a big part of things. So maybe we'll take a left turn here. So in 2 weeks, I'm talking about gender, and one of the things that's fascinating to me is that the statistics say that the LGBTQ community, a majority of them come out of the church. It's up in the 80%. Of people who hold on to that.
I haven't seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's some interesting data. Dr. Sprinkle, you can look at his stuff from Theology in the Raw and talks about it. But what's interesting is if that's true, and it's a pretty comprehensive study that brought that about, those stats about. If it's true, it's like, wait, wow, because most of them aren't in the church anymore, right? And I wonder, like, we've become a community. Maybe it's not just young people; it's all of us we've started living our lives in very boxed, a very boxed world where we don't know how to be kind. We don't know how to bring the kindness of Jesus. Excuse me. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I don't. And when you say that love, when you just talk about love, is maybe the stirring is in young people to begin to deal with the things that their generation faces. And I think they face, when I was their age as a Gen Xer, what we faced was lots and lots of peers who grew up in families without, who were divorced. They raised themselves. They, were the first generation that were going to make less than our parents. Like everything seemed despairing. And so, the revival for me was this call to dedicate my life to creating family and creating a home and creating, safety and the ability to belong. And I don't think that those themes have gone away, but I do think that each generation faces new kinds of questions because of their cultural experience.
I think the current generation, and there's probably there are a lot of versions of this, but I've had I've been shared content that's new and very popular that is kind of in our culture that's speaking to you do not that marriage would be good, but it's just impossible.
Right.
That essentially they're saying that you can't trust anybody.
Right.
That
there's a deep lack of trust.
Yeah, that it would be ideal if people could get married and trust each other, but the truth is you just can't.
Right.
And that's instilling this just hopelessness, right? That why even and that's just marriage. I mean, I think that same hopelessness is overshadowing a lot of things.
Yeah. And it seems to me to be a different hopelessness than the hopelessness of my generation.
How so?
It seems like my generation was like, okay, whatever, I'm going to do my thing. Life is screwed up, and then we're going to die. But I don't think there was the same kind of despair. I mean, I think things felt dark. I think things felt overwhelming, and people felt isolated, and there's a lot of things going on there. But I think when I look at young people, there's such a deep identity crisis going on that is different than previous generations.
Well, when you say that, that's exactly where my head was starting to go, because I thought the thing about hyper or expressive individualism, which is kind of the thing of our day, or it's probably the pendulum's already probably starting to swing in the other direction, to be honest. But the thing about it is at the center of the question is yourself. And so if life is not going well, and God hardly factors into that, and if there is a God, it's only a God of your own creation, then when things go wrong, the only place to turn with all of your ridicule and hate and distrust is on yourself. And so the self-hate and the hopelessness aimed at yourself and your ability to fix this, dig out of this, is profound.
Yeah.
And so the further we get from having any form of transcendent hope, the more the hopelessness is aimed right at our own hearts.
Yeah. I think too, when I look at my kids who are in this generation, I think stability within the leadership of our nation has a lot to do with the stability of the community. So, for instance, with Gen Xers, they tend, I remember looking at surveys where they tend to be liberal, but you know who their favorite president is? Ronald Reagan.
Interesting.
By like 90%.
Because things felt stable then?
because he was the only stable thing.
Yeah.
Right. He was grandpa.
Yeah.
And everybody else and everything in your life was, going crazy. But he said everything would be okay.
Yeah.
And he was there for 8 years.
Right.
Right. So he had a consistency there. And he, for the most part, was, yes, people say there's some scandals there, but for the most part, and for morally, he seemed to be okay. And
right.
he wasn't doing things he shouldn't be doing. And he didn't seem out for himself, even if you didn't agree with him. Sure. And so I think, and you were a kid when he was president.
Right.
I think it's a big deal when you're a kid and George Bush is president, and you've got Clinton, and there's just it's a mess and it's chaos, and your life is already a mess and chaos, and so it just compounds that, I think.
There were the years of peace with Trump, though.
Yeah, those were peaceful.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that has a big impact on our psyche.
Yeah.
More than I had realized is just how much our leaders impact our psyche, and how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about the world, and if things are.
Oh, well, yeah. I was thinking about this just the other night. My mom had the news on loud, a version of it, and it was just all the political yakety yak. And
Sure.
She shares an air vent with my daughter, who sits in her room a lot because she's a teenager and likes to do that. And I just thought, man, in the background of my daughter's life is just yak, political stuff, you know? And in my world and my mom's world, it's from the left. But, I actually was like, hey, can you turn that down last night? But I was just thinking about that background.
Sure.
It's unstable.
Yes.
It's critical and unstable.
And it's
just
destabilizing.
Constant.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's interesting in this whole conversation is we live in a very tribal world, whereas the Gen Xer, it still wasn't tribal. And this classic example was in my wife's Bible study. They were doing a psalm or whatever, and they were talking about, like, well, we should sing, because it was talking about singing. And it's a very cross-generational group. Turns out they all know Christian music from different eras, and no one knows any of the music that the other knows. And it's interesting. Sue was even saying, so she went to Learning to Love the Master, which my mother does, and she brought a song, "Oh, the Deep, Deep Love of Jesus," which is a very old hymn that I grew up singing, that many people grew up singing when they were, a long time ago. But most people didn't know it, right?
Yeah.
And so we have become very tribal. Like, music's just a good example, but where we eat, our political, areas, our education, everything's very tribalized and and so we only trust our tribe, and we probably barely trust our tribe.
Well, that's true. I was even thinking about this in the lives of students. So my daughter's a high schooler. It used to be that you were united around, there was a set of Christian songs if you were Christian, but even there was just, when I was a kid, KRQ, we all listened to the same.
I listened to KRQ,
right?
All the time.
And it was like, well, it's pop, it's probably lame, but everybody still knew the songs.
Yes.
No longer the case. We never listened to the radio, and I assume that a lot of people don't. Or my daughter will put it on every once in a while in her room, but we all have our own curated playlists.
Yes.
Abby wanted for her walk-up song for softball the other day she brought up Hypnotized by the Notorious B.I.G. that she'd heard somewhere, and she's like, have you guys ever heard this? And my wife and I were like, yes, that's old. And no, you're not going to do that.
You're not walking up to that song.
But it was curated play. She's got friends in middle school, in high school, who are like, I listen to the Notorious B.I.G.
Right.
And then another kid that listens to something completely, and there's something cool about that, my daughter likes songs from my generation and stuff like that.
Sure.
But no longer is there this sense of shared vocabulary, shared experience, shared song. They'll create some of that in a school.
Right. But it's even accessible. Like, so when you and I were growing up and listened to radio, okay, so you may have listened to KRQ and I listened to the classic rock station. Right. I forget what it was.
Yeah.
But you could quickly access what I was listening to.
Yeah.
By listening to that station.
Moment.
Yeah. Now you can't access unless I make my playlist public.
Yeah.
And you go find it, and then you listen to it.
And the inaccessibility is because of the utter accessibility.
Yes.
Because there's so much accessible, and you just can't possibly take it all in. And the same goes for content. When I was talking about that person who shared that hopeless content, I was like, I've never even heard of this.
Right.
There's millions and millions of views. I've never even heard of these people.
Yeah.
Right. And because there's just so much stinking stuff out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's curated to us individually now. So, just it's not going to get fed to me on, if it's not the Chicago Cubs, it doesn't come across my Instagram.
So we know how to connect to at least is to
I get so much
Chicago Cubs.
It's almost making me tired of the Cubs. I like they feed me so much now. I'm just like, I got this thing on my on Facebook, I guess. It was like the owner of the Cubs was talking to the left fielder. Wow. Who
cares?
Like, what? Seriously. They're making so many stories about everything just to pump it at people who are anyway, and it's overwhelming.
It's just an overwhelming content production.
So we don't share content. That's my point. I'll bet none of my friends saw that. Because why would they? Why in the world would
they? I mean, and I don't even know what the data looks like now, but I know that, in the year 2000 to the year 2002, there was more information produced on the internet than there was in entire world history that we have collected. Yeah. And so now it's just exploded since then. So nuts. In 20 years, it's just been insane. So yeah, we're overwhelmed and we live on these devices. Yeah. So kind of leads us to Lent.
Good job, Eric. You had it all planned out, didn't you?
No, but I do think when I think about revival, I'm super excited. A bunch of college students are singing, and people are and praying and being healed, and I'm excited that it's going to sweep the nation, and it probably will in some level, and it will change some people's lives. But ultimately, revival is needed for all of us, and it's needed as a lifestyle because we're always tempted to be and to live in death. I talk about in one of my sermons that we're all before Jesus just zombies. Right. And when we find Jesus, we become animated eternally. We have life. But there's still the temptation to imitate zombies and to copy them and just get in line and, grunt and eat whatever's in front of us. Yeah. And that's death. And revival is calling you to stop imitating death. And I think that's the role of our communities together is to say, hey, we have to stop imitating death. And in an odd way, with Lent, it's to acknowledge that we are all headed towards death, and a physical death. Yeah, from dust to dust. Yeah, from dust we came, and from dust we will go. But that Jesus walked through death, and gives us life and hope of resurrection. Yeah, and I think what I love about the church calendar personally is it forces us to say, we need to stop for a moment and get ready for this big celebration, Easter, which is the only reason we can survive this. Because, without Jesus, without an empty tomb, this is pointless. You and I should not be doing this podcast. Right. Or we should be doing a podcast about something else. Right. You and I should just be talking about whatever we think and telling people what they should, whatever. I don't know. Trying to be entertaining. Or not do a podcast.
Yeah, right. All solid options.
Yeah, very, very solid. I don't know.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I think I've told you in the past that I have not been I wasn't formed in the traditions that did Lent.
Right.
Yeah.
Me neither, by the way.
Yeah. And so it remains, it's one of those things where I go through every year and I go, maybe I'll do it this year. And then it still has not entered into the regular rhythm for me. Yeah. And then therefore, honestly, for our church. Yeah. And so anyway, what are you all doing for Lent? You got to teach us right now.
Well, let me tell you why Lent became important to me.
Yes, please.
And Ash Wednesday, which is tomorrow.
Yep.
Because as I studied church history, what struck me is how early fasting and preparing for Easter entered in to the church's practice, and how connected it was to the preparation for those who are new in the faith and for baptism. And it turns out that I always thought baptism, I did some more research, I always thought they got baptized on Easter, but you get baptized the day before Easter. So you have Good Friday, and then you have baptism Saturday, and then you all celebrate the resurrection. Yeah, so
makes some sense.
And you go through the last parts of your catechism during Lent. Yeah, in preparation to take communion, in preparation to be baptized, and all of that. And that started out in the 3rd century, maybe even before that. Yeah. So I mean, the fasting has changed and gone back and forth through history as to how long you fast. Do you fast the whole 40 days? Do you do it just on Fridays? All those kinds of things. But for me, I need someone. I just need some external things. I'm not an fully internally motivated person. Yeah. So I need the church to tell me, now's the time that you're going to actually look at the things that are distracting you from Jesus and from your purpose in life. And you're going to confess the things that you choose instead of Jesus. And for me, Easter, I guess growing up, Easter was a weird celebration. Yeah. It's this one day where we're like celebrating the thing that our entire faith is based on.
It kind of comes out of nowhere. And I have memories and I went to one of the big Pentecostal churches here when we first moved to town. And I remember there's a big party on Easter after church. And so they did a big production, and then you were always trying to win, and now I'm sure this church is nothing like I'm sure they've changed many things they do. I have no idea what it's like today, but it was like we're all hunting for eggs, right?
Easter egg hunt
and
is a big deal.
Trying to win the giant chocolate rabbit, which one year I got.
Well, congratulations!
Thank you. But even then, it felt like, what is this? So God came in human form, I think they just said, but really, I want this chocolate rabbit. It just seemed strange.
It does. It does seem strange.
And the eggs, and we're painting them. Yeah. I don't know. And people love this stuff.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with sort of the cultural traditions around things like the Easter egg hunting and that kind of stuff. Especially if you practice Lent, because all year because
it's not
40
the only
days,
day.
You've been walking through this process.
I'm for feasts and parties and chocolate and I ate an egg this morning. So
but I guess for me, what Lent has done has made Easter really, really special. Yeah. And because I've been thinking about it for 40 days straight in a way that I don't ordinarily think about it. Yeah. And some years I do a better job. Mm-hmm. And other years I wish that I had been more committed to the fast and to the meditative process. I have a feeling this year I feel very determined to walk into some stuff in my life and to deal with things. And so I'm looking forward to Lent in some ways and thinking Jesus is going to be extracting some foolishness out of my heart. And so I'm, not necessarily excited about that part. But
so for those of us that are novices, when exactly is Lent going to start?
So it starts tomorrow.
Tomorrow on Ash Wednesday.
On Ash Wednesday. Yes. And it is 40 days and 6 Sundays. So Ash Wednesday really is ushering in the fast, and it is a very somber experience where you get the sign of the cross put on your forehead, and you are invited out of readings in Isaiah in conversation about fasting to step in and seriously contemplate why Jesus had to die. What did you do? What is it about you that put Jesus on the cross? So part of it is just a full-on acknowledgement that I am a sinner, and that every area of my life there is a volitional choice to walk away from God. And so Jesus had to come and die for me. So it's that Ash Wednesday ushers that sort of very somber moment in. And you wear the sign of the cross on your forehead, which tells people I'm entering into this somber moment, right? Because in the Bible, when you place ashes on your head, you're saying I'm in mourning. and I'm grieving. And so part of Lent is grieving your sin and outwardly saying, I'm grieving my sin. And what it does is, as a Christian, and this has happened as I've done Ash Wednesday, is people ask you, why do you have the cross on your forehead? Or why do you have that black thing on your forehead? And then you can explain to them the gospel and why you do what you do. And so that helps. And it's just for that one day, because you really don't want to get on your pillow, so you should probably wash it off.
Now that would cost some money.
Yeah. But yeah,
there's, I think I've told you about this in the past, but the church next to our house does, at least they used to do, drive-by ashings. Yeah. Where you could just drive through and boom, boom, boom on your way to work.
Yeah, and get your little cross.
Does that, have we cheapened it?
I don't know. I mean, I think personally doing it in early, so we do it in the evening, which we encourage people to go out to eat so that they're proclaiming that in some way, if they can. But if you do it in the morning, you have to go to work all day with the cross on your forehead.
Yeah, yeah.
Which will bring some form of conversation, hopefully.
And I see the value in that. But like, just if it's just this quick, like,
sure.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't have I don't really have an opinion on that. I think, I don't really have an opinion.
Yeah. I think I'm the type of person that has to get over those hurdles to start valuing something. I can just get hung up on the way it's been done, and that doesn't mean it's not good. But I think I have this inward struggle with having seen it done in a way that felt meaningless for a long time, and it's hard to get onto the tradition. And I assume there's people who feel that way just about church itself, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, part of why I was, part of the planting the village and really moving in a different direction than maybe what most churches were doing was that I had the same experience of most churches.
Yes.
And all of their forms. I mean, and so I think one of the things that I don't know if this is true, but what I experience of young people now, especially like to go back to the Asbury thing, is I don't feel like they're as judgmental as I was when I was their age. Well, maybe it's true. Maybe they are, or it's not true and they are. But I experience them a little bit more, maybe not as willing to put their own foot down on their own belief systems and really, but I don't also find them as judgmental as me.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, I'm seeing some younger and newer people to the faith, different eras of people in our community, but the younger they are, the more just interested they are, but also less focused.
Yes, very less focused. I would agree. I mean, that's one of the things I experienced. Very less focused.
Like, we're going to try everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But at the same time, not. And I think actually, that is so true. That critical eye, I almost want them to have some of it. I'm thinking of like one of our interns at the church who we all just, he's great. But there's a part of me that wants him to, I'm like, no, don't do that. That's not, no. That is weird. Or like, that goes in a weird direction. And he just has this, like, I just want to do all the things. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. For me, Lent is exciting, and I'm excited about this season. And this year we're doing something a little bit different. Normally at our Lenten service, which if you want to show up, it's at 6 p.m. at the village. It usually goes from 6 to 7, and the very last song, we have handed out a song sheet, and everybody sings it a cappella, and we walk out the door, lock the doors so we don't talk, and we go off quietly singing. This year, we will do a little bit of that, but we're actually going to, Sue and I and a few others are going to stick around and just continue to sing and offer people a little bit more time if they want to be prayed over and engage in just more worship if they want to linger around for that. So
we are doing a prayer service at one of the homes of our folks tomorrow night as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you guys do a Good Friday service a lot of times.
We've always done a Good Friday.
Which is funny because we're very calendar oriented, and we do not do a Good Friday.
Man, what probably should happen is we should join you for Ash Wednesday. Well, you should join us.
We actually do announce your Good Friday service at the Village. And tell people to go. And people have come from the Village.
Yeah.
To go to your last one was you did a walk through.
We did the Garden of Gethsemane,
the book you wrote.
Yeah.
So we should probably partner more intentionally on those two things.
Seems like
next year, man.
Seems like each of our churches kind of has one of them.
Yeah, that would be really
built in.
Sweet
cool.
ritual to do between the two churches.
Hey, we may have just discovered something.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay, well, that feels like a podcast.
It does feel like a podcast.
All right.
As usual, it feels like we kind of started like, where are we going with this? And then
there it was.
Seems like the Spirit usually does that.
Yep. So thanks everybody for listening in. You can ask us any questions that you have. You can do the whole Eric's secret producer track.
Secret producer track. All you have to do is go click the support thing and support us.
Yep. faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com is our email. You can reach out. Our website might even be back one of these days.
Yeah.
It's technically back, just the security doesn't work, so you can't see it. And so you look at that. We're in full swing, man.
That's awesome.
It's getting real.
Yeah, we are in full swing, which means you could help us. If you click the support us $3 a month. It really helps. It pays for the hosting because, by the way, the Village pays to host Faith Over Breakfast and Healing the City and its own podcast. So, helping out, support that. That's great.
That's a thing. Yep.
All
right. Well, see you next time.
You've been listening to Faith Over Breakfast with Pastor Eric Siepen and Pastor Andy Littleton. Please share us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you.